Daddy. We got Jared back. That's number one. That's where we got to start right there. We got our man Jared back. Not that there's anything wrong with Gronk, because Gronk is obviously an all-pro tight end. He's done a great job in his career, and now that he's in the video world, he's done a great job as well. So thank you, Gronk. Appreciate you, bro.
Yep. I think Tom is the little brother of Gronk, Pete.
Oh, damn it.
A different Gronk.
You know, there's like 10 of those Gronkowski brothers. I mean, they're everywhere. They're like cattle. They just kind of move around.
Well, remember when you and I saw them out at the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah.
There were like two of them. They were tall and skinny. And Gronk ain't exactly, not tall. He is tall, but not as skinny as those guys. They were pretty thin.
Yeah.
But obviously Gronk played pro and they tried to play pro, but they were great D1 athletes, Pete.
Yeah.
All of those Gronks.
Yeah. And our Gronk was the best.
We got the good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome back to Jared and to all of you. It's great to have all of you and Jared back. And that's why we've got the stuff running down the, I guess it's this side. We've got the topics running down the side and the surfing bears or bulls and bears fighting and sound effects and all that, along with Pete's favorite sound effect, crown them.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
That's not the first time you're going to hear that today. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a fact. All right. Let's dive in, folks, and we're going to start where Pete and I normally start, and that is with the macro minute. And I'm going to say people are really focused on the UAW strike, and it's not moving a lot of the stocks like Ford, GM, and Stellantis. I know Stellantis is what they used to call Chrysler, folks. But anyway, it's not really moving those as much as it's moving some other things. But as this drags on, and they are not close. They are not close here, Pete, to a deal. They want 40% over the next 3 years. I think the automakers are offering them less than 20. So that's what I would define as not close.
Right. And my macro minute is this. We don't talk about it a lot, although, both John and I have talked about this for years on television and other places, but the volatility index, it's been all over the place. I mean, the amazing thing is it was just days ago that it was back underneath 13. We were at like 1280, something like that. And then all of a sudden we spike all the way back up to like 1480. So that doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but those are big moves, especially for an index like that. And so we are seeing that, although we've dripped back down underneath 14 as the markets went into positive territory. So we are seeing that get back a little bit, but a lot going on in volatility right now within the markets, not just the VIX, but the VXX and others as well.
Well, and also crude oil, for fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
I know a lot of you missed that. But I was actually going to cover, Pete, that we got to a new high in interest rates. But I'm guessing you might talk about crude oil. I don't know that for sure, but I'm guessing you might.
Well, interest rates are definitely interesting, John, because of the fact that you're talking about the 2-year now, again, getting back up above 5 and getting pretty sticky up there. But yeah, I mean, the one huge influence, and we talk about it whenever we bring up anything having to do with the economy, what do we say? Well, without food and energy. Well, let's include food and energy, specifically energy, on something that now is trading very close to, if not through, $92. So it's been a big, big run. We've been watching this thing happen. We've talked about gasoline prices going up, and they are. How about those jets and so forth as well? A lot of different factors that come in as far as what we have to pay for because of this and inflation. Talk about it all the time. I'll tell you what, the big leader we've got, definitely crude oil.
Yeah, fantastic futures are fantastic if you're long those futures contracts. Not so fantastic if you depend on crude oil to get your groceries delivered or your Uber filled up, whatever it might be. All right, let's talk, Pete, a little bit about Tesla, because one of the things that's interesting about the UAW strike is Tesla is not a union shop. Tesla also doesn't have all those legacy costs. So every time they move up pay to the UAW, United Auto Workers, over at GM, Stellantis, and Ford, this, of course, affects their profitability, and also they're carrying a big load already with those pensions and so forth. So to give you guys an idea, Detroit auto workers are paid on average $66 an hour right now. Compare that to $44 to $45 an hour for Tesla workers. And then if they get what they're asking for, the boost would take it up over $130 per hour for Detroit. And that's according to Wells Fargo, not to me. So that's a pretty big nut to carry, Pete, versus Tesla, which is down there, like I said, at 44 without the pension liabilities.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I'll tell you what else is interesting, John. You want to talk about, you and I bring this up a lot. When you're looking at stocks and you look at the analysts that cover those stocks, you always should know which ones are right and which ones are dead wrong. And forever, everybody heard me in Apple. They'd say, oh, well, you know, whatever. I said, Morgan Stanley, that's who you listen to. And then all of a sudden you talk about Amazon, this is who you listen to. Well, in Tesla, who you don't listen to is Goldman Sachs. This analyst has been terrible forever, and this analyst came out today again and at the wrong time. John, I'll give you a great example. Mark Delaney's this guy's name. He's been covering it for about 3 or 4 years. In April of 2020, he reduced down to a neutral when the stock was 64. Now, he waited till the stock got all the way up to 200 and then raised it up again. Well, then the stock kind of drifted around a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's around 250. And this guy's now, again, confused. And now he's going the wrong way. And it's part of the reason why you thought Tesla might actually start moving to the upside today. I'll tell you why it's not, is because somebody's listening to this guy and this guy is wrong. And I think what you were talking about as far as the pay and everything else, and we all know what's going on with Tesla. Adam Jonas has been very bullish for a lot of the right reasons at Morgan Stanley. I think I'd be listening to him, John, before I listen to Goldman Sachs on this call.
I think you'd be smart to do that, all of you, just as Pete said, because Jonas has been far more right than the gentleman over at Goldman Sachs. All right, let's stay with the EVs, Pete, but let's go to EV, big over-the-road trucks, Nikola. And they actually do make those big over-the-road trucks, of course. They were up 10%, then 19%. Just before we came on air, Pete, they were up 34% today. And they were up big Friday, and then they gave it back. Basically, they announced the expansion of their dealer network up in Canada, which was good. That was Friday. Today, they basically said, hey, Mary Chan is going to be Chief Operating Officer effective October 9th, and she is highly thought of within the company and the community. So we're seeing a pretty nice pop today, Pete.
Yeah, and Mary Chan is coming from formerly at General Motors, where she had run a lot of different things, but very international, very global. And people obviously view that as a very big positive going in for Nikola. Now, let's remember, this is a stock that just not too long ago was trading 80 cents. And it's made a big move to the upside, but we are still well below $2, and it's made a really nice move. But I'll tell you, John, when you've got a short interest of 17, 18%, moves like this happen. And when there's something positive at all, they definitely start to squeeze a little bit. But they have an incredible cash burn that still concerns me. There's a lot of different factors financially about the company that I have my concerns. I'm okay being in options here, and I've been in options in Nikola, and I was wrong on the last one, which is okay. You buy a 10-cent option or a 15-cent option and you're wrong, you feel not so bad about it. You buy a stock, now you don't feel so good when they tumble to the downside. So you can use that leverage, and I think that's what you and I would definitely do in a lot of these names that we bring up a lot of the time, where there is short interest and there's somebody playing on that short interest with the options and using that sort of as that leverage. Well, I think in terms of this name, is it going to sustain at this upper level where it's really spiked today? I got some question marks about that one, John. I still don't like the cash burn of the company.
Cash burn is a real hurdle to get over. And until they can start making enough money from the sales or leases of those big over-the-road trucks,
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for Nikola. All right, let's talk about Unity Software, Pete. Symbol U, and it's almost half of the U of the University of Miami, but this is a game engine developer. So in other words, if you're somebody who's making video games and so forth, chances are you use their software. They're one of the biggest in the space. And they've kind of had to change their revenue model because, believe it or not, the stock was down about 80% since it peaked in 2021. So as they're changing how they declare their revenue, how they get revenue, they cut a bunch of their lower priced kits, if you will, for these developers. They cut the price of those completely. They eliminated them to try to migrate people to the more expensive ones. That stock was getting cracked today because they were more or less having a revolt from the video game makers.
John, in November of 2021, the stock was over $200. It was like 201, something like that. November of 2022 was 139 bucks. Now it's 33 bucks. I mean, this is a stock that has just been in this. I mean, you want to talk about circling the drain? It is circling the drain, and it's a company that a lot of very smart people really liked. But I think the subscription model that they've been using, some of the moves that they've made, obviously there is something out there that has definitely got people on the negative side of this company. And oh, by the way, their insiders have been selling stock. That's never a good thing, John, especially when they've done it at a multiple of 4 times more sold stock than bought stock by the insiders. So that's something that, we don't oftentimes talk about that. And a lot of the time, there's little programs out there, program selling. I'm not so sure, because of what we're seeing from a level standpoint, I'm not so sure this is program selling. I think this is more likely something else. And it's something that kind of stinks, quite frankly. I don't know. This is a company that I think a lot of really smart people really liked, but I can understand now why a lot of folks are running away. And I don't like seeing this insider selling.
No, it's one of those things where you have pre-planned sales for people to sort of manage some of that new wealth that they've got and try to lock in some of those profits. And they do that by presetting dates, usually not stock prices, but dates. And they can cancel those, and sometimes they do. But if they're just selling, like Pete said, and then only buying 1 out of 5 trades, 4 of the trades are sales, 1 is a buy, it's telling you what the insiders think. All right. How about this one, Pete? AVGR. It was up 20%, 30%, 70%, 80%. Now it's back. It's only up a modest 65% right now, or 68%. What was the deal? Well, they had an intervascular image guided catheter system. They're the only ones with it. But I think Pete is going to rain on my parade by telling me how cheap the stock is.
Well, and that's not necessarily a negative at all, John, but you and I were both talking about this before we came on here, and I'm looking at the market cap and I go, wait a minute now. This is a $3 million with an M market cap. So, that's not necessarily a negative. I'm just saying how small this company is. Now, what really stands out for me, John, could potentially be something very good for any shareholders, potentially. If people really believe in this and they think this thing is something that is going to be viable and phenomenal for folks in the future, they might get bought. I mean, when you think about it, $3 million market cap, and you say, you know what, maybe we'll give you a little extra something here. And they boost it to 5, whatever the case is. But, medical devices, a really interesting area. And there's a lot of folks in there competing within this area. I like this company a lot. I like what they're trying to do, John. It sounds like they've found something that really is necessary, and a lot of people might like it. So I'm not as negative as it sounds. I'm just a little bit concerned when you're talking about a $3 million market cap. I mean, let's be honest. People are buying like a McDonald's franchise, and $3 million, that's probably cheap. So,
of course, it was a 3 million market cap Friday, folks. Yeah. Today, it's already 5.
Yep. It's already making a move.
Because that 68% move took it to just that far. Right now, it's at 492 million, Pete.
Yep.
All right. Well, it was a big week for both college and pro football. Which do you want to start off with?
Let's start off with college football, John, and I think there's some shockers out there, and I wanted to hit a combination thing here on the college football scene. One of them is one with you, of course. You and I are going to be going at it in a second here. But to start with this, who is the best? This is a shocking thing to say based upon everything that happened since, let's say, January, but why is it that the Pac-12, on a year where they basically are getting dismantled and they're all the way down to a Pac-2, but for this year they're the Pac-12, I will say this. I think they are the best football conference right now that we have. And it certainly is not the SEC because Bama don't look all that good. Georgia doesn't look all that great. LSU looked better, but they're still playing inferior competition. A lot of these folks are. So, you start looking around, John, you go, well, the SEC doesn't look all that great. Big Ten, Ohio State finally opened it up a little bit. They don't look that great. How about this? You've got 3 offenses in the Pac-12 in the top 5 right now, and that's Washington, Oregon, and USC. You've got 4 in the passing side of that, Washington, Colorado, Washington State, USC. You've got 2 out of the top 5 in the rushing category as well, UCLA and Cal, the Cal Golden Bears. Now, USC is ranked number 5, Washington's number 8, Oregon's number 10, and then you've got Oregon State, Colorado, Washington State, UCLA. And here's where I'm going off of that, by the way. On a year where I think the Pac-12 might be pretty damn good, John, and Colorado, you want to crown them? I don't know.
If you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Dennis Green was right, and here's why. So John's holding up the Colorado, and I understand. The good thing for John is he didn't just jump on the bandwagon. His daughter went to school there last year, and she's there again. So, he can say, hey, I'm part of this Colorado thing. They've given up 91 points in 3 games.
Yeah.
They gave up 540 yards to TCU. By the way, TCU is a PU stinks team this year. They're not the TCU last year. Nebraska, they gave up 350 yards. Nebraska kind of stinks too. Colorado State, does anyone even know where they're from? The Mountain West, for those who don't know, by the way, and they're not very good. They got drubbed by Washington State. 50 points they put on them. Colorado State put 500 yards on the vaunted defense of the Colorado Buffaloes. So here's what I got for you, John. I'm so sick of seeing The Rock and seeing Lil Wayne and all these other guys. I was the first guy on the Deion bandwagon, and I am now the first guy off. I'm tired of it. They started off 3-0. They've gotten fortunate. They've played okay. They've sold a lot of tickets. They got everybody. 60 Minutes is talking to Deion. And of course, he turns the table on everybody because Deion's thing is, hey, man, everybody's against us. Just so everybody knows, nobody's against them. Nobody. The whole world is on the bandwagon, on this Colorado bandwagon, and I'm jumping off. And here's why. John, they got to go play Oregon. Oh, they're ranked number 10. We'll find out a lot in that game. Oh, they got to play against USC. USC is going to be traveling to Colorado, which means you can only bring 60 players, not all 100 players that you might have. You know what that also means? It means you can't go to your scrubs at the end of the game. You can go to your second stringers. That's about it. That's a little insight for people betting on college football, by the way. Arizona State, not so great, but Oregon State, pretty damn good. They got that quarterback that I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name from Clemson that transferred there. He's lighting it up, John. Washington State, they're lighting it up. Utah, those guys are in a fist fight every week with people. They are big, mean, and they're taking care of business. So if they can go through the gauntlet of all of that, then maybe Colorado's for real. But I still am on that fence saying, not only do I not think they're real, but that defense is awful.
Yeah, you're not going to win much in the way of those when you get to the really good teams. You're not going to win very much if you let people score 30 points plus every week, even if you've got Shadur Sanders and Butler and a bunch of great receivers and, his other son that plays defensive back and made a a pretty important interception this weekend. Deion's son, that is. Looks a lot like his dad. But it's a fun team to watch, and you've acknowledged that. I do almost think, Pete, I'd throw this out to you. Is it too much of a distraction for the players to have The Rock and Lil Wayne and, Pat McAfee and, Stephen A. Smith and everybody showing up at their games now? Or is Deion a bit of a genius because he's taken all that on him? Last week, when Jay Norvell, the coach of the Colorado State, God, what are they? The Rams.
The Rams.
When he said basically, that my mama taught me to take off your hat and your sunglasses when you're speaking to an adult. I don't know what that had to do with the price of rice, but he gave Deion that to get his team fired up, and then Deion had the whole team saying it's personal.
Yeah. They're all disrespected, John. That's what they hang on to this stuff because their whole motivation is, oh, they disrespected us. Nebraska coach disrespected us. He stood on top of the Buffalo. All right. I kind of think I remember Deion maybe doing some of these moves, by the way, during his career too. Going on somebody else's little feature out there in the stadium and then kind of working his feet. So it ain't new. And is he disrespected? Well, maybe not. Who knows? But, it is kind of funny how he turns it all. And a lot of the things that Deion did, now he criticizes the guys who do what Deion did.
Yeah. Well, it's a fun team to watch.
Yeah.
And God bless. I'll tell you what, I know if they beat Oregon, and I don't know that they're gonna, Pete, but if they beat Oregon, who beat up on a bad Hawaii football team.
Yeah.
I mean, Hawaii, if you watch any of the plays of that game, folks, you'll think Bo Nix is Tom Brady. And Bo Nix is really good.
Yeah.
He's a quarterback that transferred from Auburn, right, Pete?
Yep.
I think it was Auburn. And he is a good quarterback, maybe even a great quarterback. But, oh my God, Hawaii acted like these guys all had COVID and they were staying 6 feet away from them or whatever, or maybe even 6 yards. I mean, these guys are wide open. There's nobody near them when Bo Nix is throwing the ball to him. Now, you might say that, what about Deion's defense? And I'll give you that. That defense has to be a little more stout. But that if they could actually squeak out a win versus Oregon, that would be heroic, Herculean even, because this is a really good team. TCU was not, Nebraska was not, Colorado State was not. It's nice to have those wins, but Oregon is a really good team. And then, by the way, you're like you said, you're coming up on USC.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I wonder, it'll be fun to watch the guys, if I'm right, and they get slaughtered by like an SC or an Oregon or whoever. It'll be fun to watch all the guys kind of backpedaling off of, I kind of thought, and I don't see them. I don't see them yet, John. All right. Shockers in the NFL. Now, I thought that, the college one was fun, and the Pac-12 does surprise, I think, a lot of people. I'm shocked by how good they are, John. I mean, you've got 8 teams that are somewhere in the top 20. That's not so bad. But so in the NFL, who is the shockers this year, do you think? I'll give you a couple, and either you agree or maybe you got somebody else, but I'll say shocker to the good side right now. And it's early. We're 2 weeks in. So, of course, we do this, with a little bit of that in the background. So I'm looking at Atlanta. Now, here's the interesting thing. That kid who's the quarterback there, John Ritter, comes from Cincinnati. If I heard right this weekend, I think he's riding on as a starting quarterback. I think he's riding on something like a 12-game winning streak going back to college. So, it's pretty interesting. I loved him coming out of the draft. I thought the kid was the right guy for somebody to take. As a matter of fact, I would have liked to have seen some of the other teams like the Vikings or somebody else take him. But Atlanta looks pretty good. I like the coach. I like what they're showing us so far, early at least on defense and offense. I think they're a pretty complete team. So I think that one's a little bit shocking because that whole division is sort of a difficult one to figure out down there in the South. But, we'll see how it goes. Tampa's 2-0. Did anybody see that coming? I mean, honestly, they went up against the Vikings, and next thing you know, here's a 2-0 team with a quarterback that a lot of people probably lost faith in, and he's actually played pretty well. So, I look at that. The team that disappoints me, John, is the Bears, because I'm the first guy to admit when I'm wrong. I came in saying, you know what? I think maybe Justin Fields is finally there. They got him some tools. They got him, a better defense. They grabbed some really big linebackers. They paid a lot of money in free agency. They drafted pretty well. This guy stinks. I mean, I don't know what in the world's going on, but the guy can't throw the ball to his own team very well at all. So he's got more interceptions than touchdowns in the first 2 games. That's probably not a good stat. So that's my shocker to the bad side on a team I thought was pretty good. And Atlanta kind of showing us a little something. By the way, the 49ers are the best team in football, in my opinion. There's not even an argument. That Christian McCaffrey is a freak show, and he's fun to watch. And Purdy is turning out to be a pretty damn good quarterback.
What about the Cowboys? I didn't hear them mentioned in here.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We can't figure out what the Cowboys really are, right? I mean, they beat the heck out of a really bad Giants team, right? And then the Giants showed that they can come back, but they came back against a really sloppy, really crappy Arizona team. So we don't really know where Dallas is right now. But I will say this. That linebacker from Penn State, who's been there now for multiple years with Dallas, he's always been compared to Lawrence Taylor. I'll tell you what, John, he's not Lawrence Taylor, but he ain't that far off either. He is something special.
Well, I think the Cowboys, Pete, are getting their swagger, their Cowboy swagger, and the rest of the NFL doesn't want that.
No.
Because when those guys have that swagger and they've got those, they can put 90,000 in that stadium if they want. Pete and I were there as guests of Jerry Jones, a decade ago now, Pete, I think. But, all they did was mop up on 2 horrible New York teams, the Jets and the Giants. But Dak Prescott is not throwing the picks.
Right.
And as long as he hits the guys in the white jerseys, I think he's going to do okay. And I think that team's going to win a lot of games. Like you said, their defense is stifling as well. Now, I'll say the worst team in football, there's several candidates, but the Raiders, your old Raiders, Pete, back to looking as crappy as ever.
Yeah.
I mean, Buffalo embarrassed them.
Yep.
Obviously, Buffalo felt that they made enough mistakes in that Jets first game that, they were embarrassed and they wanted to come out and make a statement. What better team to make a statement against than the freaking Raiders, because they blew them out 38-10.
Yeah.
And the Raiders don't look like they improved at all. And certainly the defense is as bad as ever.
Well, I got one last one that I'll throw out to you, and they almost did win a game yesterday. But have you seen the fact that the Denver Broncos, with all the money they spent in free agency, all the money they spent for this coach that they wanted to get so bad to get him back into the saddle, right, and the whole deal, holy smokes, John. I mean, Denver still pretty much stinks. And they're 0-2 to start off things. And they're in a really tough conference, I think. And but I'll tell you what, I'll give Russell Wilson credit when he deserves it. He deserves credit. They came back, and he launched a ball at the very end of the game into the end zone, turned out to be one of those crazy plays where he gets a touchdown. They need the 2-pointer just to go into overtime, and they didn't make it. So, it's that's another team where, with all the money that's been spent and all the, everywhere they've gone with the trade and everything else, they just can't get this thing right. And, everybody said, well, but he coached a quarterback who was short before. The hell does that have to do with anything? I mean, that's like the stupidest thing ever. And that's the reason they hired him and gave all this money and had to pay New Orleans and do this and do that and trade this. And I'll tell you what, that's a franchise that might need a new GM. John and I think you and I should send them a little resume and let them know that we could take over.
That was a pathetic play, too, on the part of the Washington Commanders, Pete, because when Russell Wilson, he heaved the ball as far as he can throw it, because Russell's arm is not what it used to be, and it was never as big as the big quarterback's arms are. There are guys like Herbert and Allen that can throw the length of the field.
Yeah.
You know, they can throw end zone to end zone. Russell cannot do that anymore, and he never could. But I think he threw it from maybe the 40, 45, Pete, and it got to about the 5, let's say. It didn't go to the end zone.
No.
And all the stupid Washington Commanders jumped up and tried to intercept it instead of knocking it down. You knocked that ball down. I bet you Ron Rivera was just rip shit that those idiots, Pete, were trying to catch it, because a bunch of them jumped up and they were trying to catch it, and it bounced off of them into the hands of the guy that's just kind of waiting there to catch it in the end zone.
Yeah.
It was the dumbest play. If they lost the game on that play, it would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
But as it is, like you say, even all of Walmart's money can't save that pathetic franchise right now. So they might be the worst, but I still think the Raiders are one notch lower.
Raiders are terrible. That quarterback is he's pretty dreadful.
Well, make sure you join us tomorrow, folks, 1 p.m. Eastern time for the Rebels Edge. Pete, Jared, and I will be back then. See you then.